Obamacare enrollment's down by 11% compared to this time last year. So former President Obama is turning to his signature social media post to help boost his legacy achievement.
I think you've proven that you don't need to see me taking jump shots or sitting between a couple of forest plants in order to know it's important to have health insurance. If you need health insurance for 2019, sign up for it right now at healthcare.gov.
All right, CNBC says historically low unemployment could be playing a factor in lagging enrollment numbers. Let's talk about it with a Democratic 2020 presidential contender, Maryland Congressman John Delaney, who actually favors universal health care and is the first of the 2020 Democrats to visit us here on Fox News at Night. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about this. The Atlantic did a lengthy piece on you, talking about you saying John Delaney is playing the long game. They say you check several progressive boxes. You back universal health care, a $15 mandatory minimum wage, and a proposed carbon tax piece of legislation, which we see how that's playing in France now. Is that a fair characterization of where you are?
Well, that's where I am on those issues. I mean, there's a lot of issues, obviously. I mean, even what's going on in France, though, I mean, if you think about what's happening in France, they definitely put a carbon pricing mechanism in place. But what they didn't do is they didn't take all the revenues that were generated from that and return it to their citizens, which is the way I would do it. I just introduced actually bipartisan legislation last week, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, the first bipartisan carbon tax in the Congress. Puts a price on carbon. It takes 100% of the revenues and gives it back to the U.S. citizens. So it's just a pass-through to change behavior. That's the type of proposal that people can get behind. But if you go out there and say we're going to put a price on carbon and the government's going to keep all the money and we'll figure out what to do with it, trust us, they don't like that so much.
But let me ask you, because it's not getting a lot of attention, instead of what we're seeing is getting headlines from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman-elect, and the group that she's putting together to do this new Green Deal. And when we saw the coverage of that, I thought, well, that's completely one-sided as far as a party. It's just Democrats who are sponsoring that. And it seemed to be overshadowing what you're trying to do in a bipartisan way.
Well, you know, and I think people have to remember the only way we do things in this country that really endure is on a bipartisan basis. If you look at all the great things we've done across time in this country, it's always been when there's been huge support among the American people for the initiative, and good-minded and like-minded Democrats and Republicans found common ground, which didn't mean they agreed with each other on everything, but they came together for the common good, putting their country ahead of their party, and they got things done. And I think climate change is a huge problem. We have to deal with it. It gets worse and worse each day. And the way to deal with it is to get the country, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, behind something big that can deal with it, and that's what we did.
Okay, so that brings me to the question, though, of Obamacare. Didn't get a single GOP vote on the Hill. And, you know, it's flagging. It's having some problems. And there are all kinds of considerations about whether it needs to be reinforced, whether it needs to be dismantled. The American people seem pretty split on that. In most polling, it shows a pretty even divide. It didn't get a single Republican vote. So how
and that's unfortunate. Again, I think if you want to do things that really last and don't fall into this kind of partisan kind of trap of whoever's in power tries to reverse whatever the other party did, you have to try to do things together. There is a bipartisan proposal to improve the Affordable Care Act that Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray have in the Senate, right? Bipartisan. It fixes some of the obvious weaknesses in the Affordable Care Act, but it keeps the things that are really working. Because the American people do like it. That's why it wasn't able to be overturned by the Republican Congress.
Because they campaigned on that. And then when it came time to vote for it, they couldn't do it together.
But that shows our democracy works, because polling consistently showed that more than half the American people actually supported it. So it shouldn't have been repealed, right? But what it should be is fixed. You know, healthcare is 1/6 of the U.S. economy. If it was its own country, it would be one of the largest countries in the world. To think that we reformed it in a really big way, which is what we did with the Affordable Care Act, but that we didn't sign up to fix it, knowing that it wouldn't be perfect, that's where the Congress has absolutely let down the American people.
Okay, let me read you something else from the Atlantic. Now, so people should know, you've done the full Grassley in Iowa,
all 99 counties.
All 99 counties. This is not a joke for you. You've been there, and you've done a lot of legwork there, which a lot of people haven't even begun that process. But they say being a wealthy white businessman will likely work against him in this particular moment when more women and people of color are running for and being elected to Congress than ever before. And they cite your net worth at around $200 million. So how do you connect with the people of Iowa or across the country who don't know you, but that's the characterization they hear of who you are?
Well, so I've done over 200 events. I've been to all 99 counties. I'm in coffee shops. I'm in people's living room. People see me as someone who's trying to make a difference in their lives. They want to know what's in your heart, and they want to know what's in your head. They want to know why you're running, why this matters to you, why this is so important for me to do, and what I want to do. That's what they care about. Now, they look back at my dad, who was a union electrician, right? First in my family to go to college, started businesses from scratch. They've seen that I've been successful. And I tell them, listen, the fact that I've been successful allows me to have the privilege of serving you and going to the Congress and now being your president and to try to make things better, because we all should believe in something better. And my life story is an example of that. You know, I mean, my grandparents are immigrants. My dad's a construction worker. Because of a great education and a society that supported me, I was able to, you know, do great things in the private sector, and now in the Congress, and now I have the amazing opportunity to run for president.
A fan of capitalism?
Totally.
Okay.
But we always need to be working to make it more just and inclusive. Listen, capitalism is the greatest innovation machine ever created. But that doesn't mean there's not a role for government and the nonprofit sector to work to make sure capitalism is benefiting all of our citizens, which it hasn't been doing as much as it should have in the last several decades.
We're going to leave it there. But Congressman, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. Many more hopefully to follow. Okay.